RomCalms, where romance and relaxation meet. Subscribe for a new romance novella every week. Harvest Swoon, presented by RomCalms. Chapter 1. The old iron gates of the vineyard creaked open as Emily steered her car down the gravel path, a cloud of dust swirling in her wake. The sun was dipping low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the rows of vines stretching out like green ribbons on either side of her. She rolled down the window, letting the sweet, earthy scent of the vineyard fill the car. It was a smell that took her back to her childhood, to days spent running through these very fields under her aunt's watchful eye. As she parked in front of the charming stone house that had stood sentinel over the vineyard for generations, a sense of nostalgia washed over her. The house, with its ivy-clad walls and weathered shutters, had always seemed magical to her as a child. Now it stood as a testament to the legacy she had inherited, a responsibility that was both daunting and exhilarating. Stepping out of the car, Emily stretched her legs and took a deep breath, trying to steady the flutter of excitement in her chest. She wandered towards the house, her fingers trailing over the rough texture of the stones. The vineyard was hers now, her future and her past intertwined in the rich soil beneath her feet. The door to the house opened with a familiar squeak, and she was greeted by the musty, comforting smell of old books and dried lavender. The interior was just as she remembered. The heavy oak furniture, the faded floral curtains, and the walls lined with photographs of generations past. As she moved through the rooms, her hand brushed against a framed photograph on the mantelpiece. It was a picture of her as a child, her face alight with laughter, sitting on her aunt's lap. Emily's eyes lingered on her aunt's smiling face, and a pang of loss tightened in her chest. "She always said you'd come back to this place," a voice said from the doorway. Startled, Emily turned to see Mrs. Donnelly, the vineyard's longtime housekeeper, standing in the doorway with a warm yet melancholic smile. "I wasn't so sure myself," Emily replied, returning the smile with a hint of sadness. "But here I am." Mrs. Donnelly walked over to her, her step slow but steady. "Your aunt would have been so proud to see you here, taking over the vineyard. She always knew it was meant to be yours." Emily nodded, her heart swelling with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "I just wish she could have seen it," she said softly. "She sees it, dear. She sees it," Mrs. Donnelly said, patting Emily's hand reassuringly. As the evening light filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the room, Emily felt a deep connection to the house and the land outside. She knew the journey ahead would be challenging, reviving the vineyard to its former glory. But as she stood there, in the heart of her childhood memories, Emily felt ready to embrace the future, whatever it might bring. Later that afternoon, as the sun began its descent behind the rolling hills, Emily donned a pair of gloves and started the task of familiarizing herself with every corner of the vineyard. Her exploration led her to the old wine cellar, a place that had always seemed mystical to her as a child. The air was cool and damp as she descended the creaking wooden stairs, the scent of aged oak and wine lingering in the musty air. Rows of dusty wine barrels lined the walls, their wood darkened with age. Emily ran her fingers over the barrels, feeling the grooves and textures of the wood, each one telling a story of harvests long past. It was here, in this sanctuary of silence, that she felt closest to the soul of the vineyard. As she moved through the cellar, her attention was caught by a peculiar barrel tucked away in a dim corner. It was smaller than the others, its bands rusted and wood faded. Curiosity piqued, Emily crouched down for a closer look. That's when she noticed something unusual, a faint outline of a compartment door on the side of the barrel, almost invisible under layers of dust and cobwebs. Her heart quickened with the thrill of discovery. Gently, she worked the door open, revealing a hidden cavity within the barrel. Inside, protected from time, lay a bundle of letters, their edges yellowed and corners frayed. Tied neatly with a faded red ribbon, they seemed to be waiting for her, a secret kept for decades. With reverent hands, Emily lifted the bundle and carried it upstairs to the fading light of the living room. Settling into an armchair, she untied the ribbon, her fingers trembling slightly with anticipation. The letters were delicate, and she handled them with care, aware of the weight of history in her hands. The first letter was dated over a century ago, its ink faded but still legible. The handwriting was elegant, a flowing script that spoke of a time long gone. Emily began to read, her eyes tracing the words of a love story that unfolded with each line. "My dearest Thomas," the letter began. The words penned by her great-grandmother, a woman Emily had only known through stories and faded photographs. The language was poetic, filled with longing and a sense of enduring love. Her great-grandmother wrote of stolen moments and secret meetings, of dreams for a future together despite the challenges of their time. As Emily continued to read, the evening light dimming around her, she was transported to a different world. She could picture her great-grandmother, a young woman full of hope and passion, sitting by candlelight, pouring her heart into these letters. And there was Thomas, the recipient of this outpouring of love, a man Emily knew nothing about, yet who felt strangely familiar. With each letter, the story grew more poignant. The lovers spoke of plans and promises, of a life they yearned to build together. But there was an undercurrent of something else, a sense of urgency, a fear of the unknown. It was clear that their love was a bright flame in a time of uncertainty. Emily read through the final letter. "Isabel, I am returning your letters to you. The enemy approaches, and I would never forgive myself if the letters became lost or destroyed. I want to save them to read time and time again when I return home." Emily placed the last letter down, her mind swirling with emotions. The story in these letters was incomplete, their ending lost to time. She felt a deep desire to know more, to uncover the fate of these star-crossed lovers. It was a mystery that called to her, a puzzle that she was determined to solve. With the night now fully upon her, Emily made a decision. She would delve into the history of these letters, into the story of her great-grandmother and the mysterious Thomas. Chapter 2. The following morning dawned bright and clear, a gentle breeze whispering through the vineyard. Emily sat at the old wooden table in the kitchen, the letters spread out before her. The morning sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow on the delicate pages. She had spent the night dreaming of the love story they contained, a tale of passion and longing that had transcended time. As she read the letters again, Emily was drawn deeper into the world of her great-grandmother, Isabel. Each letter was a snapshot of a life so different from her own, yet filled with emotions that were universally timeless. Isabel wrote of her secret meetings with Thomas, of walks in the moonlit vineyard, and whispered promises under the stars. But it was not just the romance that captivated Emily. It was the strength and depth of Isabel's character that shone through her words. In a time when a woman's voice was seldom heard, Isabel's letters were bold and expressive, painting a picture of a woman who was both ahead of her time and deeply in love. Emily's eyes lingered on a particular letter, dated just before the outbreak of the First World War. Isabel's handwriting quivered with emotion as she wrote of the uncertainty of their future, of the fear that Thomas might be called to war. The letter ended with a plea, a hope that their love would survive the turmoil of the times. Emily decided she needed to know more. Who was Thomas? What had become of him? And how had their story ended? The letters had stirred something within her, a longing to connect with her past and understand the legacy of love and resilience that had been passed down to her. Determined to uncover the truth, Emily decided to visit the local library. Perhaps there, in the archives and records, she would find clues about Thomas and the conclusion to this century-old romance. She gathered the letters carefully, placing them in an old leather satchel that had belonged to her aunt. It felt like a fitting way to carry the past with her as she sought out its secrets. As she drove through the village, Emily felt a warm excitement. The vineyard had always been a part of her, but now it felt like she was a part of its story too. She parked in front of the quaint stone building that housed the library, its ivy-clad facade welcoming her in. Inside the library was a haven of quiet and calm, the air filled with the scent of old books. Emily approached the main desk, where a young man with a friendly smile greeted her. "Can I help you find something?" he asked, his eyes curious. "Yes, I'm trying to find information on a resident from the early 1900s, a man named Thomas," Emily replied, her voice tinged with anticipation. "Unfortunately, it's all the information I have at the moment." The librarian, introduced himself as Alex, nodded thoughtfully. "We have a collection of local historical records. Let's see what we can find." In the dimly lit archive room, rows of dusty books and old documents lined the shelves, a treasure trove of history waiting to be explored. Alex led Emily to a large table where he began to sift through the neatly organized files. "So, this Thomas, he's a bit of a mystery to you?" Alex inquired, glancing up from a ledger he had opened. "Yes, very much so," Emily replied, her fingers absently tracing the spine of an old book. "He was mentioned in some letters I found in my family's vineyard. They're from my great-grandmother to him. I think they were in love." Alex's interest seemed piqued. "Love letters from a century ago? That's quite a find. Do you have them with you?" Emily nodded, opening her satchel to carefully pull out the bundle of letters. As she handed them to Alex, their fingers briefly touched. He handled the letters with a reverence, his eyes scanning the delicate handwriting. "These are remarkable," he said, genuinely impressed. "And you said they were hidden at a vineyard?" "Exactly. It's like they were waiting all these years to be found," Emily said, her voice soft with wonder. Alex carefully set the letters aside and turned back to the ledger. "Let's see if we can find any record of Thomas. Do you have a last name?" "Unfortunately, no, just Thomas," Emily replied, a hint of frustration in her voice. "And I know my great-grandfather's name, Way Henry, so it is not someone I can look up from my family history. I don't think she ever married this man." They spent the next hour poring over census records, birth and death certificates, and old newspapers. The process was meticulous and slow, but Emily found herself enjoying the search, especially in Alex's company. His knowledge of local history was impressive, and his easygoing nature made her feel comfortable. "Ah, here's something interesting," Alex said suddenly, pointing to a faded newspaper clipping. "An article about a local artist named Thomas from around the same time as your letters. No last name, but it's a start." Emily leaned in to read the article, her heart quickening. "An artist? That could be him. Is there anything about his personal life?" "Not much here, I'm afraid," Alex replied, his expression apologetic. "But this gives us a new angle to explore. Maybe we can find something in the art archives or local galleries from that period." Emily's eyes lit up with renewed hope. "That's a great idea. Maybe his art can tell us more about him." They continued their search, moving on to a collection of old art exhibition catalogs. As they worked side by side, their conversation flowed easily. Emily found herself sharing more about the vineyard and her decision to take it over. Alex listened intently, his interest genuine. "It must be quite a change for you, taking on a vineyard," Alex said, glancing over at her. "It is, but it's also exciting," Emily admitted. "I feel like I'm rediscovering a part of myself and my family's history." "That's a beautiful way to look at it," Alex replied, smiling warmly at her. "And it seems these letters are a big part of that journey." "Yes, they've opened up a whole new world to me," Emily said, her eyes meeting his. "And I'm grateful for your help, Alex. I wouldn't have known where to start with all of this." "It's my pleasure, Emily," Alex said, his voice sincere. "I love a good mystery, and this one is particularly intriguing. Let's see it through together." As the afternoon light faded outside, Emily realized she had spent hours in the library, lost in the past with Alex. There was still much to uncover about Thomas and her great-grandmother's story, but luckily, Emily felt she wasn't alone in her quest. Emily and Alex stood up, stretching their legs after hours of research. The library was quiet, with the soft rustling of pages and the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards. Emily gazed out the window, watching as the sky turned a soft shade of twilight. "I guess we should call it a day," she said, a hint of reluctance in her voice. "But I feel like we're just getting started." Alex glanced at his watch, surprised by how late it had become. "Yes, I suppose it's about that time. Let's regroup tomorrow, though, if you're free." "Thank you, Alex. I really appreciate your help. Would you like to grab a coffee? There's a nice little cafe just around the corner," Alex offered casually, but with a hopeful undertone. Emily smiled, pleasantly surprised by the invitation. "I'd like that. It'll be nice to talk about something other than census records and newspaper clippings." They walked to the cafe, the cool evening air refreshing after the stuffiness of the archive room. The cafe was a cozy spot, with a warm ambiance and the comforting aroma of coffee. They found a quiet table by the window, and as they sat down, the conversation flowed effortlessly. Over coffee, they shared more about their lives. Emily talked about her upbringing in the city, her career in marketing, and the sudden decision to leave it all behind for the vineyard. Alex shared his journey into becoming a librarian, his love for history, and his passion for uncovering the stories hidden in the past. It's fascinating how objects like those letters can connect us to our history, Alex said thoughtfully. They're like time capsules, holding stories and emotions that are still so palpable. I feel a responsibility to uncover the truth behind them, Emily replied, her eyes reflecting the warm lights in the cafe. It's not just about the past. It's about understanding my family's legacy and, in a way, understanding myself. Their conversation then drifted to lighter topics, favorite books, movies, and travel experiences. Emily found herself laughing at Alex's anecdotes, enjoying his wit and the easy way he shared his thoughts. As they left the cafe, the night had settled in, casting the village in a soft glow of streetlights. They stood for a moment, hesitant to part ways. I had a really nice time tonight, Emily said, her voice sincere. Me too, Alex replied, a hint of warmth in his voice. I'll see you tomorrow at the library? Yes, I'll be there. Good night, Alex. Good night, Emily. Chapter 3. The next morning, Emily arrived at the library with a childlike excitement. The sun shone brightly, casting a warm, inviting light over the village. As she pushed open the heavy wooden door of the library, the familiar scent of old books greeted her, feeling almost like a welcome from an old friend. Alex was already there, waiting for her with a stack of books and documents on the table. Good morning, Emily. I found some interesting leads this morning, he said, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. Morning, Alex. I can't wait to hear about them, Emily replied, her curiosity piqued as she took a seat opposite him. They began by examining a series of old maps, tracing the growth and changes of the village over the decades. Alex pointed out landmarks that were relevant during the time of Emily's great-grandmother, trying to piece together the backdrop of her life. Look at this, Alex said, his finger tracing a line on one of the maps. There was an artist's colony just on the outskirts of the village around the same time. It could be where Thomas worked or socialized. That's a great find, Emily said, leaning in closer to examine the map. It could give us more context about his life and connections. They moved on to examining records from the artist's colony, which included exhibition catalogs and member lists. The meticulous search was time-consuming, but each new discovery added another piece to the puzzle. As they worked, their conversation meandered through various topics, from art history to the challenges of vineyard management. Emily shared more about her aunt, the person who had inspired her love for the vineyard. Alex listened attentively, his interest genuine. It sounds like your aunt was an incredible woman, Alex remarked. Her influence on you is clear. She was, Emily agreed, a soft smile on her lips. I sometimes feel her presence at the vineyard, guiding me. Their search took them deeper into the afternoon. They combed through exhibition reviews and artist profiles, looking for any mention of Thomas. It was like assembling a giant jigsaw puzzle without knowing what the final picture looked like. As the day wore on, Emily and Alex found themselves engrossed in a collection of old photographs of the village. The black and white images depicted scenes of daily life from a century ago, offering a visual glimpse into the world of Emily's great-grandmother and Thomas. That's the beauty of history, Alex said as they examined a photograph of the village square. It's a quilt of stories, interwoven and rich in detail. Each thread is a life, a story waiting to be told. The afternoon light began to fade, casting long shadows across the library. They had gathered a wealth of information, but the key pieces of the puzzle, the details of Thomas's life and the fate of his romance with Isabel, remained elusive. We've made good progress, but there's still so much we don't know, Emily said, a hint of frustration in her voice. We'll get there, Alex assured her, his tone confident. Every story has its secrets, and it's only a matter of time before we uncover theirs. As they packed up their materials, Emily felt a mix of exhaustion and excitement. The mystery of the love letters was proving to be more complex than she had imagined, but with Alex by her side, she felt hopeful that they would eventually find the answers they were seeking. After leaving the library, Emily decided to take a solitary walk through the vineyard. The rows of vines, now laden with ripening grapes, stretched out before her like waves of green and purple. The air was filled with the sweet scent of the fruit, and the gentle rustling of leaves in the breeze created a tranquil melody. This was her sanctuary, a place where she could think and feel connected to her roots. As she walked, Emily's thoughts drifted to the letters and the story they told. She felt a deep resonance with Isabel's expressions of love and longing. Inspired by this connection, she found a shaded spot under an old oak tree and took out her journal. There, surrounded by the beauty of the vineyard, she began to write responses to Isabel's letters. "Dear Isabel," she wrote, her pen flowing across the page. "I feel as though I've come to know you through your words. Your love for Thomas, so beautifully expressed, has touched my heart." Emily poured her thoughts into the journal, expressing her own fears and hopes. She wrote about the uncertainty of taking over the vineyard, the grief of losing her aunt, and the unexpected journey the letters had led her on. It was a cathartic experience, blending her voice with Isabel's across the expanse of time. As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the vineyard, Emily felt a sense of peace. Writing to Isabel had given her a new perspective on her own life. She realized that, like her great-grandmother, she was on a journey of love and discovery. Closing her journal, Emily stood and looked out over the vineyard. She could almost feel the presence of her ancestors, their lives and loves woven into the very land she stood on. Feeling reinvigorated, Emily made her way back to the house. She knew that the next day would bring more research with Alex, more digging into the past, but for now, she felt a profound connection to her own story, a story that was still being written. The following day, Emily met Alex at the library once again, greeted by the familiar labyrinth of books and the quiet hum of history that filled the air. As they delved back into their research, there was a comfortable ease between them, a rhythm they had quickly fallen into. Amidst the rustling pages and whispered discussions, Emily couldn't help but notice the subtle changes in their interactions. There were shared smiles over amusing anecdotes from the past, and moments of their shoulders brushing together as they looked over documents. These small, seemingly insignificant moments added a layer of warmth to their quest. During a break, Alex suggested they take a walk in the village park, a change of scenery from the confines of the library, as they strolled along the tree-lined paths. "It's so lovely connecting with my family history in this way," Emily confessed, watching the sunlight filter through the leaves. "What an unexpected turn this is." "It's the unexpected turns that make life interesting," Alex replied, his eyes meeting hers. "And I find it commendable that you're taking all these changes so well." Emily felt a blush rise to her cheeks at his words. There was an unspoken acknowledgement of the connection they were forming, something deeper than just a shared interest in the history of the letters. As they walked back to the library, Alex suggested, "Maybe you could show me around the vineyard sometime. I'd love to see where this story began." "You know," Emily started, "I'm hosting the vineyard's annual wine festival in a couple weeks. I've been planning it since before I even arrived. I would love for you to come." "Send me an invite. I'll be there," Alex said through a smile. "Great, I can't wait," Emily replied, blushing to the ground. "The vineyard is special to me, and I think it's a big part of this story, one that I would love to share with you." Chapter 4. The day of the vineyard's annual wine festival had arrived, bringing with it a flurry of activity. The usually tranquil vineyard was transformed into a vibrant hub of excitement, with colorful banners fluttering in the breeze and the sound of music filling the air. Emily was at the heart of it all, overseeing the preparations with a mix of nervous energy and excitement. As the guests began to arrive, the vineyard buzzed with life. Locals mingled with tourists, all drawn by the reputation of the vineyard's exquisite wines and the enchanting atmosphere. Tables laden with an array of cheeses, fruits, and freshly baked breads lined the paths, while the air was perfumed with the aroma of roasting meats and grilled vegetables. Emily, dressed in a simple yet elegant dress, moved through the crowd, greeting guests and ensuring everything ran smoothly. Her eyes sparkled with pride as she watched people enjoy the fruits of her labor. This was her first wine festival as the owner of the vineyard, and the significance of the occasion was not lost on her. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the scene, the sound of a violin joined the gentle strumming of a guitar, beckoning guests to the makeshift dance floor laid out on the grass. Emily watched as couples and friends laughed and danced, the joyous atmosphere infectious. That's when she saw Alex making his way through the crowd towards her. He wore a casual shirt and trousers, looking comfortably out of place among the more formally dressed guests. "Emily, this is incredible," he said, his eyes taking in the scene with an appreciative gleam. "I'm in awe." "Thank you, Alex," Emily replied, her heart fluttering slightly at his presence. "I'm glad you could make it. It means a lot to me." They walked together, with Emily pointing out various features: the old oak tree where she loved to read, the oldest vine that had been planted by her great-grandfather, and the small pond that glittered under the evening sky. As they approached the dance floor, a slow, melodious tune began to play. The dancers swayed gently to the rhythm, lost in the moment. Emily felt a gentle tug at her heart, a yearning to be part of that magic. "Would you like to dance?" Alex asked, extending his hand with a shy smile. Emily hesitated for a fraction of a second, then placed her hand in his. As they stepped onto the dance floor, she felt a wave of exhilaration mixed with a hint of nervousness. Alex's hand was warm in hers, and as they began to move to the music, everything else seemed to fade away. They danced gracefully, moving in sync with the gentle rhythm. Alex was a surprisingly good dancer, his movements confident yet gentle. Emily found herself relaxing in his embrace, the initial awkwardness melting away into a comfortable closeness. As the song ended, they remained on the dance floor for a moment longer, reluctant to break the spell. Emily looked up into Alex's eyes, seeing a reflection of her own feelings mirrored. "Thank you for the dance, Alex," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was my pleasure, Emily," Alex replied, his voice warm. The festival around them continued in full swing, the laughter and music a vibrant backdrop to their more intimate conversation. They found a quieter spot near the edge of the festivities, a small table illuminated by the soft glow of lanterns hanging from the branches of an old tree. "Seeing the vineyard like this, alive with people and music, it's really beautiful," Alex said, his gaze lingering on Emily's face. "You've done something incredible here." Emily felt a warm blush at his compliment. "It's been a dream of mine, bringing this place back to life. Tonight feels like a culmination of that dream," she replied, her voice tinged with a mix of pride and vulnerability. They sat down, their conversation flowing as easily as the wine in their glasses. Alex talked about his favorite moments in the library, the thrill of uncovering hidden pieces of history. Emily shared her vision for the vineyard, her hopes for its future. As they talked, there was a moment when their hands reached for the same glass and their fingers touched. They both pulled back slightly, a charge of awareness passing between them. The air seemed to hum with unspoken possibilities, a sense of something budding beyond just friendship. The festival was winding down, the night sky now a blanket of stars. The air had cooled, and Emily shivered slightly. Without a word, Alex removed his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It was a simple gesture, but it spoke volumes. "Thank you," Emily said, her voice soft. As they sat there, watching the last of the guests depart, a comfortable silence settled between them. Finally, Alex spoke, his voice gentle. "I should let you get some rest. It's been a long day for you." Emily nodded, though a part of her wished the night wouldn't end. "Thank you for being here, Alex. It wouldn't have been the same without you." They stood up and faced each other, neither quite ready to say goodbye. "I'll see you tomorrow at the library?" Alex asked, hope in his eyes. "Yes, I'll be there," Emily replied, her heart already anticipating their next meeting. Chapter 5. The morning after the festival, Emily sat with Alex in the quaint local cafe they had frequented since their research began. The cafe was quiet in the early hours, with only a few early birds scattered at the tables. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, a comforting presence as they discussed their next steps. Alex, who had been doing some research on his own, looked up from his notes with a contemplative expression. Emily, there's something I haven't mentioned yet. I think it might be important. Emily leaned forward, her interest piqued. What is it? It's about my family, Alex began, a hint of hesitation in his voice. You see, my great-grandfather's name was Thomas. I didn't think much of it, of course, but I was just looking at a painting at my mother's house the other day, and I remember the story being that it was painted by my great-grandfather. From what I know, he had my grandmother young, and my great-grandmother passed away during childbirth. Perhaps it is the same Thomas, trying to find love again after tragedy. Emily's eyes widened in surprise. You really think they might be the same man? I can't be sure, but it's possible, Alex replied. My mother has some of his belongings stashed away somewhere. Letters, sketches, a few personal items. Maybe they could provide a clue. Maybe your great-grandmother was a love that was never able to fully bloom. That's incredible, Alex. Could we take a look at these belongings? Of course, Alex said. I can bring them to the library this afternoon. It's a long shot, but who knows what we might find. Later that afternoon, they met in the library's private study room, where Alex laid out the items he had brought. There were several sketches, beautifully drawn, depicting various landscapes and portraits. Among them, a sketch of a young woman caught Emily's attention. The woman's features were delicate, her expression thoughtful, almost as if she was waiting for someone. This is beautiful, Emily said, her fingers hovering over the sketch. Do you know who she is? No, there's no name, Alex replied, studying the drawing. But she almost looks a bit like you. They sifted through the other items, a collection of letters, a faded photograph of a man who bore a striking resemblance to Alex, and an old well-worn paintbrush. Each item was a piece of history, a fragment of a life long past. As they examined the letters, they found one that made them pause. It was addressed to a Miss Isabel, and the handwriting bore a striking resemblance to that of the letters Emily had found in the vineyard. This can't be a coincidence, Emily whispered, her heart racing. The room fell silent as they absorbed the magnitude of the discovery. As they continued to explore the items, a sense of awe enveloped them. The revelation in the library left Emily and Alex in a state of quiet astonishment. The room around them seemed to fade into the background as they grappled with the implications of their discovery. There's a symmetry to this that feels almost unreal, Emily murmured, her fingers tracing the edge of the letter. Our families, brought together again all these years later through us. Alex nodded, his eyes reflecting the same wonder. It's like we were meant to find these pieces of our past, to think our ancestors may have shared a connection, and now, here we are. As they gathered their things to leave, Alex hesitated. Emily, would you like to have dinner with me tonight? Not as researchers, but just as us? The invitation caught Emily off guard, but the flutter in her heart was undeniable. I'd like that, Alex, she said, her voice tinged with a soft smile. Chapter 6. Under a canvas of twinkling stars, Emily and Alex strolled through the vineyard. The evening was cool and clear, the air filled with the subtle scent of ripening grapes. The chaos of the festival was a memory now, and in its place was a tranquil, almost magical calm. Emily had invited Alex to see the vineyard at night, to share with him the serene beauty that had always captivated her. They walked side by side, their footsteps soft on the earthy path, the occasional sound of their laughter breaking the stillness. This place is incredible at night, Alex said, looking around with an expression of awe. It's like stepping into a different world. I've always felt the same, Emily replied, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the moonlight. At night, the vineyard reveals a quieter, more intimate side. It's when I feel most connected to it. They found themselves at the old oak tree, its branches creating intricate patterns against the night sky. Emily sat down at its base, a spot she had often retreated to for solitude and reflection. Alex joined her, sitting close enough that their shoulders touched. In the daylight, the vineyard is about work and legacy, but at night, it's about dreams and possibilities, Emily mused, her gaze fixed on the vines that stretched out before them. Alex turned to look at her, his eyes soft in the moonlight. And what do you dream about, Emily? She smiled, a mix of vulnerability and strength in her eyes. I dream of making this place thrive, of honoring my family's legacy. But lately, my dreams have started to include new things, new possibilities. As they talked, the distance between them seemed to shrink, a shared warmth growing in the space between their words. The night wrapped around them like a blanket, intimate and comforting. They sat under the old oak tree for hours, talking and laughing, the barriers of the outside world falling away. As the night deepened, Emily and Alex remained under the old oak tree, their conversation ebbing and flowing like the gentle breeze around them. The vineyard lay in quiet slumber, a world away from the bustling activity of the day. I've always felt that every place has its own story, its own spirit, Alex said thoughtfully, gazing out at the vineyard. Being here with you, I feel like I'm part of this place's story too. Emily turned to him, her expression softening. You are, she said quietly. You've become a part of its history, just as much as you've become a part of mine. Their eyes met in the moonlight, holding a conversation of their own, one that words could not quite capture. The more we uncover about our ancestors, the more I realize how much those stories shape us, Emily continued, her voice a mere whisper. I used to feel like I was just living in the shadow of their legacy, but now I see it differently. We're not just inheritors of their stories. We're the continuation of them. The air around them was charged with an unspoken emotion, a connection that was both new and as old as the stories they were uncovering. In the quiet of the vineyard, under the watchful eye of the moon, they found a comfort in each other's presence.
The hours slipped by unnoticed, the night a cocoon that held their growing connection. In the tranquility of the vineyard, away from the rest of the world, Emily and Alex discovered a shared rhythm, a harmony that resonated
With the whispers of the past, the promise of the future. As the moon reached the top of the sky, they stood up, reluctant to end the night, but knowing the day ahead would bring new challenges and discoveries. Their walk back to the house was quiet, but it was a comfortable silence. As they approached the house, Alex stopped and turned to Emily. In the sky of stars, his expression was earnest, filled with an emotion that had been growing throughout the night. Emily, he began, his voice steady yet filled with a hint of vulnerability. I know we started this journey looking into the past, but I find myself more and more drawn to the present, to now, to this. He gestured between them, searching for the right words. Emily looked up at him, her heart beating faster. She sensed the significance of this moment, the turning point it represented in their relationship. Alex, I feel it too, she admitted, her voice soft. There was a pause, a breath of time where their shared emotions hung in the air. Then Alex stepped closer, closing the distance between them. His hand reached out, gently touching hers, their fingers intertwining. As the moon lit the vineyard around them, their lips met and history was made. Chapter 7. 2 days after their night under the stars, Emily and Alex set out to visit a secret rendezvous spot mentioned in Thomas's letter. The air was crisp and fresh, filled with the promise of discovery. As they drove through the winding country roads, the landscape around them was alive with the vibrant colors of early morning. This feels like we're stepping right into the pages of the letters, Emily said, her voice tinged with excitement. She clutched the old letter, now a precious guide to their journey. Alex nodded, his eyes on the road. I hope we find something here. The directions in the letter led them to a secluded area on the outskirts of the town. They parked the car and continued on foot, following a narrow path that wound its way through a dense copse of trees. The further they walked, the more it felt like they were traveling back in time, moving closer to the secret world of Emily's great-grandmother and the mysterious Thomas. After a short hike, they emerged into a clearing. It was a breathtaking sight, a small, hidden meadow surrounded by wildflowers, the grass still glistening with dew. At the center stood an ancient oak tree, its branches sprawling majestically overhead. "This must be it," Alex said, his voice hushed in reverence. Emily approached the tree, her fingers brushing against the rough bark. "It's exactly as described in the letter. This is where they met, where they shared their dreams and promises." The meadow, untouched by time, seemed to hold the echoes of the lovers' meetings, their whispered words and laughter almost tangible in the air. As they walked, Emily imagined her great-grandmother in this very spot, perhaps sitting under the tree, waiting for Thomas. She could picture the couple in this hidden haven, their love a secret from the world. "This place is like a time capsule," Alex observed, looking around. "It's as if their love has been preserved here." In the serene meadow, surrounded by the whispers of the past, Emily and Alex continued their exploration. The ancient oak tree at the heart of the meadow seemed to stand as a guardian of memories, its sprawling branches a testament to the enduring nature of love. As they circled the tree, Emily noticed something partially buried at the base, obscured by the overgrowth of years. Kneeling down, she brushed away the leaves and soil, uncovering a small, weathered metal box. It was rusted with age, but still intact. "I wonder if it's theirs," Emily said, her voice trembling with excitement. She carefully opened the box, revealing its contents preserved against time. Inside, they found a collection of items. A faded photograph of a young couple, unmistakably Emily's great-grandmother Isabel, and a man who bore a striking resemblance to the sketches Alex had brought from his family. Alongside the photograph was an unsent letter, its edges worn, and a small, intricately carved wooden locket. Alex leaned in, equally captivated. "This is incredible, Emily. It's like finding a lost chapter of their story." Emily carefully unfolded the letter, recognizing Isabel's handwriting. It was addressed to Thomas, filled with words of deep sorrow. He had died in battle. Isabel wrote of receiving the news and deciding to write one final letter to her love that was no more. She wrote of love lost and a future stolen from her. This box was a final goodbye to the man she was never able to fully love. Emily felt tears welt in her eyes as she read the letter. What a tragic end to such a beautiful story. Alex placed an arm around her in comfort. Their love was unfulfilled, but it wasn't forgotten, and now it's brought us together. The photograph, though faded, radiated the warmth and affection between Isabel and Thomas. Their expressions were those of two people deeply in love, a love that seemed to transcend the confines of the photograph. "And this," Emily said, holding up the locket, "it must have been a gift from Thomas." The locket was delicate, its surface etched with a floral design. Gently she opened it to reveal a tiny hand-painted portrait of Isabel inside. As they sat beneath the oak tree, surrounded by the artifacts of a century-old romance, Emily and Alex were struck by the power of the legacy they had uncovered. It was a story of love, of hope, and of the enduring nature of the human heart. "This journey," Emily said, her eyes glistening with emotion, "it's taught me so much about love, and about the bonds that connect us through time. Finding this, it's like Isabel and Thomas are reminding us that love can endure anything." Alex nodded, his hand finding Emily's. "Their story may have been lost to time, but we've brought it back to life. And in doing so, we've started a new chapter of our own." Under the shade of the ancient oak tree, Emily and Alex sat side by side, the discovered artifacts from Isabel and Thomas's love story spread out before them. The air around them was still, as if even nature itself was pausing to honor the moment. "Their love was cut short, but it never faded," Alex said in the silence, his hand gently covering hers. "And now, through us, their story lives on. We've uncovered their past, but more importantly, we've honored their love." They sat in silence for a moment, lost in the gravity of the discovery and the deep connection they felt to Isabel and Thomas. It was as if the spirits of the past lovers were there with them, blessing their newfound relationship. "Alex," Emily said, turning to face him, her eyes shining with unspoken feelings. What we've found here, what we've shared, it's changed me. You've changed me. Alex's gaze met hers, intense and full of emotion. Emily, from the moment we started this journey, I knew it was going to be something special, but I never imagined it would lead me to someone as extraordinary as you. In that beautiful, secluded meadow, they shared a kiss. It was a kiss that bridged the past and the present, a symbol of a love rekindled under the watchful eyes of the oak tree.